Hi there, Lockie here. I'm sitting in my art studio. It's a bit messy in here, 2 weeks after walking St. Cuthbert's Way. Solo hiking, wild camping, couple of campsites, and just sort of having a fun time in nature. Now, it's called St. Cuthbert's Way, named after a saint, St. Cuthbert, obviously. So many people treat this as a kind of pilgrimage. And I decided to pop on camera just for a second and give you a broad disclaimer up front to say that this is perhaps an unusual kind of walking video. So I mentioned in the footage that I treat this as something like a personal pilgrimage. What does that mean? Well, we'll get into that, but definitely I'm doing a lot of self-reflection whilst I'm walking. So during this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about some faith stuff, and I have gone back and forth on whether to include that, how to talk about that, to whether I use vague terms or whether I be a bit more direct. And what I just keep coming up to is feeling like it's better to be authentic, give you a true reflection of where I'm at, which may just be a bit strange. So I'm really thinking about, things like my relationship to the natural world. I'm thinking about my faith, things that perhaps aren't the most universal stuff, but maybe there's something universal in just me being vulnerable and sharing some of that self-reflection. Before I go, I've got one more disclaimer to make, and that is that I reference a couple of things, like reference some pieces of writing in the video. And because I'm hiking and I don't have the opportunity to kind of look things up before I start talking, I'm just, talking off the top of my head, I misquote a couple of things. Not egregiously, but just wanted to recognize that there's a couple of misquotes in there. But I'm going to include everything just because that's going to be the most authentic reflection of my experience of this hike. Look at this weather. Gorgeous. Okay, shall we get on with video? Let's start out with a bit of a montage of getting to the beginning of the route, because I had to do that via coaches. It's like 12 hours of traveling just to get to the start of the route. So, a bit of a montage of that, and then we'll hit the road. It's about 6:30 in the morning. This is Melrose Abbey, rebuilt in 1385 after the original abbey was destroyed. Again, it is in ruin, but it was here at Melrose that St. Cuthbert began his ministry, began his journey after a fashion, and it's where we're beginning our walk of St. Cuthbert's Way. Now, last night and this morning, I've been thinking about how I frame this journey. I look at it through a number of different lenses. I'm doing it as a charity fundraiser. I'm doing it to connect with nature. I'm doing it because I'm interested in history. And I am doing it as a pilgrimage. I am a religious person as well. So there are lots of lenses through which I could think about and talk about this journey. And whilst I was on the bus this morning, making my way from Berwick-upon-Tweed, where I spent the night last night, to here, I wrote down some of my thoughts. Last night I stood on the old bridge at Berwick and watched a pair of seals playing in the water. An auspicious omen, I thought. St. Cuthbert was known for his love for animals. His connection with nature was central to his sense of spirituality. Nature was the medium through which he connected with the divine. Then, when arriving at my Airbnb, a nightingale was sitting on a tree outside. I listened to its song and was reminded of Keats's poem, Ode to a Nightingale. Thou were not born for death, immortal bird. No hungry generations tread thee down. The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown. Perhaps the self-same song that found a path through the sad heart of Ruth. When sick for home, she stood in tears amongst the alien corn. Well, that sealed it for me. I will talk about this journey as pilgrimage. And I think actually it synthesizes everything else that I'm interested in. So nature, history, all those other frames kind of are synthesized through pilgrimage. Keats's line, thou were not born for death, immortal bird, no hungry generations tread thee down. It kind of reminds us by inflection that the human is kind of born for death. Because of this, there is great value in that knowledge that is passed down from one generation to the next, passed down through generations. We have to seek out the wisdom of our forebears. We have to protect it. We have to pass it on to the kids. On this journey, St. Cuthbert and his story will be our old one. And here am I, a 21st century descendant of his faith and a custodian of it, listening for that same witness in nature to something immortal and eternal, the witness of nature to God. I love the idea in Keats that my ancient forebear Ruth might have been comforted by the song of the nightingale. My journey on this pilgrimage is not like hers was. She was a brave, voluntary exile, not knowing what would happen, never able to return home to Moab. So we're not the same in any way. She gave up her home for love of her mother-in-law, but still, I, and maybe all of us, can relate to that feeling, that image of her in the field, the feeling of being far from home. But that's the thing, in the story of Ruth, in nature, and in my faith, there's a promise that if we follow this path, home will find us. So, on that note, should we get going? Quick stop off in the museum. Get to see some of the sculptures and things that were in the abbey. Some of the columns, bosses and architectural details have been brought into the museum here for preservation. There's some shells up there, but here's the one I really want to show you. This is a guy's face, and there's like leeches in his eyes and going into his mouth, and he is being devoured by leeches. This is proper medieval stuff. We've got gentle rolling hills. We've got springing. We've got an amazing sound of bird song. All kinds of different kinds of birds. Made me wish I was better at identifying bird song. Right now, I'm nestled between this hill and another one over here. These are, I think it's Eildon Hills, I'm not quite sure on the pronunciation. St. Cuthbert's Way kind of goes straight between them. I mean, why am I pretending like I'm not going to go up the big hill? Of course I'm going to do that. There's Melrose Abbey, all the way down there. There we started. So if you're planning to walk St. Cuthbert's Way and you get to this bit, it's day one, an hour in, you get to these hills. And you're thinking, shall I go up or not? It's extra time, it's extra energy to spend. You just have to do it. It's not very far. The views from the top, fantastic. No reason not to do it. Everything feels great when you can see for miles around you. Everyone that makes a video about hiking does these shots where they walk away from camera, and then of course you've got to come back and collect it, so you end up walking twice as far. So I did one because I guess you have to, but I don't think I'm going to do many more of them because I can't be bothered with that. There's tons of this Lesser Celandine. It's kind of buttercup, I think. It's an invasive species. I mean, it's very pretty, but it ain't very good for you. Here's the truth, I love being outdoors. I don't know that much about birds. I know nothing about flowers. Not really things I'm big into. I'm more like bugs, beetles, that kind of wildlife guy. But on this journey, for some reason, it's the flowers and the birds, as well as everything else, that's really leaping out. And I figure, why not take every ounce, every milliliter of joy that is offered. Beautiful. I don't know about wandered lonely as a cloud. There is not a cloud in the sky today. But yeah, flowers. They're neat, man. 10 out of 10. Standing waves always remind me of Robert Frost. They're throwing back toward the source. evening is starting to touch on the air, and I'm not where I hope to be at this point in the day. Still got some more walking to do, but I've just come across this pretty cool thing. It's called Crystal Well, and there's a well here and then this little fountain to draw water from. Isn't that cool? Right, the story of this thing is interesting. So monks from Melrose, where we were this morning, originally kind of erected some kind of structure here, and it became a meeting place between England and Scotland to try and work out some peaceful negotiation, and that didn't go so well, and there ended up being a battle here some, I think, 200 years after that. And by this time the place had become known as Liliard Cross, and a legend began to be told about the Maiden of Liliard, who fought against the English. Her legs were cut off, and despite being on stumps, she kept on fighting. That's pretty Monty Python-like, isn't it? So this is kind of her monument. And that's where I'm camping tonight. I just kept going until I felt like my feet were about to give out. Wouldn't normally like to camp next to somewhere historic because people might want to come and see it, but actually no one's been past in a while, so I don't think anyone will be here till the morning, and I'll be well gone quite early. So it's the only good patch of ground as well, so it's quite nice here. Should we have a little look around? I'm about to make some dinner. It is, I'll tell you what time it is, 20 to 7. There you go, can't keep walking all that much longer. The sun is really shining still at 20 to 7, but that will soon be dropping behind the hills.